Hello again, this is Dr. Cindy Woody with some tips for your performance assessment for school leaders written commentary. I think this part is obvious. You probably already know that you should be writing in first person on your written commentary. You should avoid and completely not use the real people's names, obviously. You don't need to make up fake names. Just refer to your colleagues as colleague 1, 2, and 3, teacher 1, 2, and 3, my principal, our school counselor, my middle school, my district. Don't ever say the name in your written commentary of your school. And make sure that if you're submitting artifacts that have your school's logo or maybe the name of a teacher, that you've taken the necessary efforts to mask that or remove that or clip that, crop that somehow from your images for your artifacts. And while you write your artifacts, imagine that you are explaining this to the grader who's never been to your school, and they don't even know what town you work in or what district you're in or what part of the state of Texas you're from. So you're going to pretend maybe that you're talking to dear Aunt Sally who's visiting your school, and that you're trying to explain to her what you've done here to make this school a better place as part of your practicum work. For the brainstorming part, you need to be brainstorming on a different document other than the submission field for PASL. So don't let your PASL task submission be the first place that you're writing your drafts. You're going to want to write your drafts on a Word document. Avoid doing Google Docs or notepads because the format of those doesn't lend itself well into copying and pasting into the format of the exam fields. You may find that out a little late if you're already working on a Google Doc, but I advise you to move your work from a Google Doc into a Word doc. And if you don't actually have access to a Word doc tool, you can get that for free if you have a .edu account or another educator account. The Microsoft Office Suite for Education is provided free for educators. So check with your district if you have a question about that or on the Microsoft website. Be sure that you take advantage of spelling and grammar checks. This is not necessarily a test of how well you write in the essay format in timed situations. They take care of that in your TExES 268 Principal as an Instructional Leader, the PIL exam, where you have those short answer essay prompts. So this is a place where you are allowed to use spelling and grammar check tools. So make sure that you're actually checking those things and also having a friend proofread your work. We'll come back to that in a minute. On the next few pages or slides, I'm going to actually cut some language out from the PASL handbook. So I want to give full credit to the PASL handbook. You can find that handbook by Googling the PASL Candidate and Educator Handbook, or there's a little link down here in the fine print if you want to pause and see the tiny print there. It's a lot to type in, but I would just do an internet search for that. But remember, one of the basic things that you need to know as a test taker is you're writing from the perspective of the leader who led these tasks. You're not talking about tasks your principal led or that your professional learning community led. You're talking about you led and facilitated this work, and it demonstrates that you're ready to be a principal and that you've met the state standards for a principal certification candidate. There's a descriptive writing checklist provided in the handbook. It's not a surprise. There's nothing that's going to shock you on here, but it's just a nice thing about being logical, being clear, make sure that an outsider can see the events as you describe them and that you're not making assumptions that they can understand them. Let me talk just a little bit more about that here. So we're going to be talking about the 3 types of PASL writing for a second. This is where the descriptive writing task came from. So when you write your written commentary, the second big principle besides writing is if you're a leader, is to separate in your mind the difference between when they ask you to describe, to analyze, or to reflect. So if you're describing, you're simply helping dear Aunt Sally understand what's happening in this place she's never visited before. She doesn't know anything about your school. She can't actually come to your school. So maybe you're at the family reunion. You have Aunt Sally's undivided attention, and she's asking you to tell her about the work you've done to get ready to be a principal. So you're going to describe the scene as if you're walking her through this place she's never been and knows nothing about. Don't make assumptions with her. You're going to find artifacts if it says describe what's going on in your site. you're going to find artifacts that help you describe that, and you're going to refer to them as evidence for Aunt Sally to really understand. So if you're saying we needed to work on heterogeneous grouping, and the longitudinal data shows that we struggled for years in math, then you would actually pull out the little sample and say, this is what it looks like. I don't have all the data here, but this is just an example of what the data looks like when we talk about math instruction at our school. And then when it asks you in the task to analyze, analyze actually means for you to go down into the meaning of what occurred. Like, I'm going to tell you what happened, but I'm also going to explain to you why that's important. Because remember, dear Aunt Sally can see maybe that you held a professional learning committee meeting or series of meetings. She doesn't know why you did that. She doesn't know what happened because of that. She doesn't know how that turned around the feeling of being a professional educator on your campus, or maybe how working with the leadership team helped you pull together the different stakeholder groups to identify and solve this common problem in a way that had never been approached before. So when you link an artifact in this section, and in all sections really, please make sure that you explain why you link the artifact and what the artifact proves. So if you're linking, say, a schedule of intervention times, you want to mention in the written commentary that you're linking this artifact, and for the artifact, you want to make sure that it's mentioned in the written commentary. So don't attach an artifact that's not described, and don't describe an artifact that's not attached. And then for the reflection section, you're helping the reader think back on the significance of what you would do, or what happened, and what you would do differently. So this is where you're going to make Aunt Sally proud of you. The grader they're trying to understand, why did you decide to do this? And because you did it, what difference did it make? So you're going to help Aunt Sally see that you grew as a leader. You're going to help her see that your campus grew. And also you're going to help her see that now that you've done this once, you know better, you're going to do things a little bit differently next time. Maybe you're going to include more teachers' voices in the selection of curriculum materials, or you've learned that it would have been better to have meetings before school instead of after school, or whatever your takeaway is. This is the place when it says to reflect. This is where you're actually going down deep into your thoughts and sharing that with good old dear Aunt Sally. Okay, and then for the PASL writing, analysis, and reflection. So the PASL handbook dives into just a little bit about what the difference in analysis and reflection is. So it talks about with analysis, you're focusing on reasons, motives, and interpretations supported by concrete evidence. In reflection, you're focused on the process that occurs in the completion of the activity. So when you attach artifacts in this part, it's all about the reflective thought. And then a little bit more about how analysis and reflection overlap. The analysis and the reflection do overlap, but they're not identical. So take time to read this in the handbook. It says, for example, if you're instructed to analyze the success of a particular activity or some specific strategy, don't use the analysis or reflection sections to describe. Okay, so that happens in the descriptive part. So explaining what happened is part of the description. And then just stating a conclusion, let's say you said the professional development meeting was a success, or students made good progress. You've just wasted words, because you're not going to need credit for that because you don't have anything to support that statement. So raters need to be made aware of why you interpreted the results of a lesson the way you did. You need to explain your interpretation of the evidence, which is a form of analysis, as well as your understanding of what should come next, which is part of the reflection. So take a minute to think about that. So if at the end of your professional learning community meeting process, your PLC process, maybe you and the committee went and tried out in your school 3 different ways to group students, and at the end you decided that type B was the best way to group students, you need to explain that and to show evidence of that and why that is important to you and what you would do differently next time, or how you would extend this in the future. I love this picture of the man and his cat. I don't know why I thought this was really particularly funny, but this is what happens when the reader is assuming that the grader can read their mind. The grader is not there with you and your cat while you're reflecting on what's happened and all the things that you've learned. This is your opportunity to do this. This is your opportunity to reflect and to analyze and to get your thoughts on the paper so you get credit for them. Like, you've done great things. There's no doubt in my mind that you have made a huge difference at your school, and these tasks that you've gone to all the trouble to do have turned things around for some people, for the students and for the colleagues on the campus. Remember, the bulk of what you're talking about is what happens with your colleagues. You're not really talking about what happens with the kids. You're talking about how the colleagues changed instruction, therefore it was better for the kids. But you're leading what happens with the colleagues. You're working as the principal in this. We're not giving you a test of what a great teacher you are. Hope that makes sense. And then, man, if I could just give you one piece of advice, it's to think about how much money you've got invested in this test. Read the manual. Nobody wants to take the time to read. I get these panicked emails, which are fine. I don't mind a panicked email. Sometimes I panic. I'd like to email somebody. But I get these panicked emails that ask questions that are clearly addressed in the manual, and I know you haven't read the manual. And you're spending, I think right now while I'm taping this is fall of 2021, I think it's $375 for this one exam. Not to mention what you spent on your principal prep program and the amount of time and effort, and for some of you, maybe some tears that you put in to writing the task and gathering the artifacts and completing the task out there in the field. So read the manual, attach everything. I always tell the story about a candidate who reached out and said that she didn't realize that she had only attached artifacts to task 1 and that the graders of task 2 and task 3 couldn't see those artifacts. Read the directions for attaching artifacts and for writing your submissions in the boxes. Also, for some crazy reason, we had a number of people in the last PASL administration who turned in sections that were blank. I'm not sure if maybe they just wanted feedback maybe on task 2 and they didn't have time to do task 1 and task 3, but TEA came back and asked us as a group, as a state group of educational administrative professional professors, why did we think that students did that? I suspect people got rushed and wanted to go ahead and get their exam turned in, but I think you would be far better if you come up on the deadline for the exam and you figure out you're not ready. Pay the money. I think it's $40 to change your test date. Just postpone. I know it may change what job opportunities are available. There will be a job opportunity available for you again in 6 months. I know it feels like this is the only job opportunity that will ever come across your way. And people panic. They say, I have a chance at being the assistant principal on my campus. If you don't hurry up and approve me, or I don't hurry up and get this submitted, if I don't hurry up and pass this exam, I can't get this job. Well, first of all, you may not get the job. And second of all, that job is going to eventually come open again, or there may be a different job that you can apply for. But don't make your decision about your PASL exam based on the potential for a job opening if you hurry up and submit when you're not ready. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I would tell you again to go back and read the PASL website. They've given you tons of stuff there. There's a library of artifacts. There's all kinds of videos. Every time I look at the website, there's something fresh there. There's advice for people who are teaching and working virtually. There's all kinds of things on that website, if you will take the time to look for them, that you need to look for and take time to review so your investment is protected. I care about you. I care about your success. So one more word about proofreading. It does seem a little bit like cheating, doesn't it? If you're taking a test, and it's an essay test with written commentary, you know your sister is a great writer, maybe your uncle or somebody, your teacher next door, and you ask them to review your work and help you edit it and proofread it and give you feedback. It is not cheating. What is cheating is when you ask your university professor or your mentor to help you construct your task, select your task, provide feedback on what you're going to submit. You can't do that. But you can ask somebody to help you proofread your written word. and to make sure that it makes sense. So remember, as long as the work is yours and yours alone, the ideas are yours, the work is yours, the artifacts are yours, it's okay. And you're going to reread your own work. So the first thing is to read the work as you write it, then reread it as soon as you finish a section, then put it away and see if it makes sense. Read again another day when you feel fresh, and then go back and read a third time to see if you answered the prompts. So look at the prompts, look at the writing, make sure it's concise, take out all the extra words, add words where they're needed, and then get the rubric out and give yourself a score and be picky. Because I guarantee you the readers are trained to be picky. We don't want a bunch of riffraff leading our schools. We want only the best. We want you to lead our schools, and we want the best version of you leading our schools. So be picky. Be strict with yourself when you grade PASL. And then, as a final step, find a non-university, non-mentor friend and ask that person to read it and provide feedback, and also give them the rubric. And for some of you, it might be better to sit beside them while they're reading it so that they can think out loud, and you can go, oh, dear Aunt Sally had no idea what a PLC was. I should have spelled that out the first time. And there's all kinds of little answers and feedback and tips you can get from having an outside person read it. And then I want to end with this little bit of encouragement. You can do this. Like, I've seen people be incredibly successful on the PASL exam. The ones that are never going to pass it are the ones who never take it. So while you're sitting there sweating and thinking maybe you can't or you don't have time, eventually you're going to need to do this. The time will elapse. There is a window of opportunity for you to pass it while you're still fresh and you're still considered to be an intern or in the practicum at your campus, where people don't mind sitting in for a meeting or they don't mind doing a video reflection for you. But that ship will sail, and at some point you will have outweighted your own window. And also, these exams get harder. They raise the scoring bar. So this fall we've increased the score that it takes to pass from the raw score. That's a state requirement. And then also, some of you may be taking this exam because you didn't take or didn't pass the old version of the principal exams back when the exams were a little bit easier. This one is more trouble, and it's more expensive, and it's more time consuming. And so I've never yet seen a revised edition of a state exam when they changed the state standards or they changed the state exams where it got easier. The next iteration of principal certification will be harder. I promise you that. It just goes to show it's always going to be more challenging. The standards will go up, the passing scores will go up, the exams will get harder. So just go do this. You get 5 attempts at it. We don't want you to blow attempt 1 thinking, oh, I'll just take 1 and see how I do. Don't do that. If you don't pass on attempt 1, I strongly encourage you to pay $75 and have the task rescored that you failed. So for each task that you fail, it's another $75. But they allow you to submit new material. So they give you feedback on your first submission, and they say maybe on the rubric you scored here, 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 and here. And if you really read the rubric, I promise you, when you resubmit, you'll resubmit better quality work that will score higher on the rubric. I've never failed to see that happen with people who studied what they did poorly on and had another opportunity, $75 later, to pass the exam. They passed it the first time. Our scores are still really good here and across the state. So you can do this. Don't give up hope. Don't talk yourself out of doing it. You're also going to need to set yourself a calendar up. There's some other videos I have about planning your time, planning your task, but you've got to have to be methodical about it. Just like when you're a principal, they're not going to give you extra days and extra hours to get your work done. You have to live and work simultaneously. So go get them. Let me hear from you. Tell me when you pass. Tell us all how great it is being in the leadership roles that you're going to get in the future. Go make a difference in our Texas schools.